Hello, can everyone hear me? Wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Maggio. All right. It looks like it is 7 o'clock, so we will get started here. All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order. It is Monday, May 26, 2022, and this is a meeting of the Rent Stabilization Commission for the City of West Hollywood. We'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather, currently known as the City of West Hollywood, is the occupied, unceded, and seized territory of the Gabrielino Tongva and the Gabrielino Kizh peoples. Commissioner Topsham, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
Thank you, Chair. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Mr. Secretary, can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Ayers?
Here.
Commissioner Kirby is absent tonight. Commissioner Maggio?
Here.
Commissioner Montemayor?
Here.
Commissioner Topsham?
Here.
Vice Chair Copeland?
Here.
Chair Morris?
Here. We have a quorum. Thank you very much. Has everyone had a chance to review tonight's agenda? I see yeses. A motion, anyone?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda May 26, 2022.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. A roll call, please.
Commissioner Ayers?
Aye.
Commissioner Maggio?
Aye.
Commissioner Montemayor?
Aye.
Commissioner Topsham?
Aye.
Vice Chair Copeland?
Aye.
Chair Morris?
Aye. Excuse me, the motion passes. And now we are on to the approval of the minutes from our last meeting, May 12th. A motion?
Motion to approve the minutes?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. A roll call, please.
Commissioner Ayers?
Aye.
Commissioner Maggio?
Aye.
Commissioner Montemayor?
Aye.
Commissioner Topsham?
Aye.
Vice Chair Copeland?
Aye.
Chair Morris?
Aye. We have a motion that passes. Thank you very much. And do we have any public comment?
We do. We have one public comment. I'm admitting her now. It's Lorraine Popialarski.
Hello. And I think they need to unmute. Can you give them those instructions?
Yes. Lorraine, if you can hear us, please press *6.
Still need you to unmute. If you can do *6, that will unmute your phone. There we go. Hello, we can hear you. You can go ahead with your public comment.
Do you want me to speak?
Yes, you can speak.
Okay, my name is Lorraine Popialarski. I'm a resident at 1021 North Edinburgh. Am I to go ahead now or?
Yes, you may go ahead.
Okay. So I have an issue with an ordinance that was passed, and I recognize some of you were at our commission hearing when we had an appeal from the landlord, Taylor Megdal. I live at 1021 North Edinburgh Avenue, who is asking for a rent increase because his expenses are not meeting his operating income. We've been back and forth with this, and recently the hearing was scheduled on May. The council agreed to remand the hearing. So we all were given notice that the remanded hearing would be happening on May 6th at 9 a.m. Everybody made accommodations to show up for that remanded hearing. Mr. Schneider, who was the examiner, asked, he took attendance. He says, does anyone know where Mr. Megdal is? And everyone said, no, we don't know. He apparently we got a call from the city. He asked for an extension on that Monday, but I also received a link from Eric Fountain on that Wednesday to continue with the proceedings. And so that's what happened on May 6th. The proceedings were continued. We had a hearing, and according to the paperwork that you supply to us in regards to the hearing, number 3 says what happens if an affected party does not attend the hearing, and it clearly states that if they do not appear at the hearing, the proceeding, the results will be binding. For some special reason, I don't know why, Mr. Megdal is given another chance, even though he did not call or did not show up, or nor did he have anyone contact us or Mr. Snyder. We now have to go through another hearing, which totally does not go along with the rules and procedures that we have in writing, on May 31st at 2 p.m. When I called the city to say what happened, we already had this hearing. They said, oh, well, Mr. Megdal, the landlord, asked for a reschedule. And I said, well, then if he asked for a reschedule, why didn't the examiner even know there was a reschedule? And, there just seems to be a lot of favoritism for this landlord, and something's going on, and it's not right. I understand that landlords need to cap their expenses, but when they're given opportunity after opportunity and don't follow the procedures that you've put in place, we don't feel protected.
All right, your time is up. Thank you for
Okay.
calling in. We can't respond, but we appreciate your comments.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. Next, we have the manager's report. Mr. Holland.
Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners. Jonathan Holler, Brent Stabilization Manager. Taking a look at the look-ahead calendar. You were scheduled to hear an appeal tonight, but the appellant withdrew that. And at the moment, there's no other appeals on the calendar. You will be hearing from Danny Rivas tonight, though, with a Code Compliance Division presentation. I do anticipate that there will be some appeals that will be calendared, perhaps even for the next meeting, which will be on June 23rd, but I don't know for certain yet. Because we had no items for next meeting on June 9th, that has been canceled. And at the next meeting, we'll be doing the announcement of the AGA and relocation fees. 14th, there'll be the reorganization of the commission and appointment of liaisons. But for now, we'll be back on the 23rd, and I'm available for any questions.
Commissioners, any questions? Yes, Vice Chair Copeland.
Hi, Mr. Holland. I suppose we don't know yet if these meetings are going to be continued by teleconference or in person yet. That's a bit far out. I had a question about the housing element report. I understand that's now available for public viewing and comment. Is that correct, as of this week?
Yes, that is available. I did get an email about that. Let's see if I can find that. Okay, so the housing element is available for public review until June 6th. And that can be found at www.weho.org/housing element. So if anyone wants to look at that and make comments, it is available there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. That's good to know. Any other questions for Mr. Holland or comments? I do not see any. All right. Thank you, Mr. Holland. Commission comments. Mr. Maggio.
Yes, Chair, would we please adjourn our meeting tonight in honor of the children shooting at the grammar school, middle school in Uvalde, Texas, please?
Yes, we can do that. Thank you for that. Other commissioner comments? Vice Chair Copeland.
Hi, just a I said the last meeting that I would give a brief update on the subcommittee with the meeting I had with Strategy Corp about the community well-being and safety plan. Some of the things that we talked about were what we considered a success story they asked for, and Plummer Park came to mind, which was problematic for a while, and now it's a park as it should be for the most part. And a lot of that was to do with the advocacy of local residents and park goers, and also the strong presence of an East Side Neighborhood Watch. So we did discuss the benefits of increasing the neighborhood watches and reactivating them as part of that plan. Some of them have fallen by the wayside and are not active anymore in the last couple of years. So that was one thing. Some people wanted more outreach from the city and the public safety department directly to residents about what's going on in the city. And also there were several requests for the public safety commission meetings to continue, even when they're back in person, to continue to be on not only YouTube, but televised on WehoTV so that everyone could access them and hear the sheriff and fire updates, reports, and so forth. Resume coffee with the cops when possible. That was a good way. The closest thing we had to beat cops or neighborhood cops was an opportunity to meet with residents so they could tell them what was going on in their particular areas once a month. Encourage the filing of reports by both the law enforcement and residents, because that's where the statistics come from what's going on in the city. And so those need to be accurate. We discussed maybe the feasibility of a triad program locally. I think the closest one is Brentwood. And that's something I was involved in maybe 20 years ago in founding chapters of that in Virginia. It's a partnership with national and local law enforcement, senior service providers, and community members to provide better safety and quality of life for seniors. And we do have a large senior population. So that was one suggestion we had, but this will be ongoing for a while, and they will be doing a public outreach as well. So there's also the update to the historic context statement, which is going on right now. I think we mentioned that last time. And I will have some news later on in the evening, but I'll save that for the end and let us move on. I know we have Mr. Rivas here. So thank you very much.
Thank you for those great updates. I would just like to let everyone know that the Universal Basic Income, or the Guaranteed Income Pilot Test Project for the City of West Hollywood, is going to have their applications open from June 17th to June 26th. And that is 25 randomly selected people will receive 18 monthly payments of $1,000 each. And to be eligible to apply, you need to reside in the city of West Hollywood, be age 50 or older, and have yearly income of $41,400 or less. And the website to apply is ncjwla.org. And there's a link on their page, which I think is a great opportunity to explore the merits of that. Any other commissioner comments? Yes, Commissioner Ayers.
Yeah, I know that the West Hollywood Community Housing Corporation announced that they are now taking applications for a new site called the Berendo Stage. It's a 42-unit, high-quality, affordable rental apartment community for households making 50% of the area median income. To apply for that housing, applications are available online at whchc.org. And you click on Find Housing, and you'll see where you can get the lease for that property. Also, I noticed that there are, and that particular property is not in West Hollywood. It is in the Pico, Union, Koreatown area of Los Angeles. But looking at their list of properties, I noticed that there are a couple of West Hollywood apartments that seem to be open for applications, including the Fountain Fuller Apartments, the Genesee Willoughby Apartments. There might be a couple of others. So anybody seeking affordable housing who qualifies should go to WHC.org. That's the West Hollywood Community Housing Corporation, to find those leases. And just my own personal outreach, I didn't attend this as a commissioner, but as a advocate of housing for transitional age foster youth. I recently attended a meeting, a webinar that on Project Home Key, which has it's a state funding program for affordable housing. It is set aside from its budget 8% to go toward transitional youth. And a lot of these are kids who can no longer live at home after they become a majority of the age of 18, and it also includes a lot of foster youth, and we have a lot of foster youth in LA County. So I attended this webinar. It talked about various incentives for organizations to apply for grants that could provide appropriate housing for transitional age youth. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Very helpful. Any other commission comments before we move along? Seeing none, we'll move right along. We do not have an appeal this evening, so we will go to new business. Code Compliance Division presentation with Mr. Rivas.
Great, and thank you, Chair and Vice Chair, and members of the Rent Stabilization Commission. My name is Danny Rivas. I'm the Interim Director of Public Works, and I'm also currently serving as the Code Compliance Manager. I'm going to try to share my screen right now, as I just put together a couple of slides. And what I wanted to do is just provide the Commission with an overview of our operations here in the Code Compliance Division. And then, of course, after the very short presentation, I'm available for any questions that the Commission may have. So the Code Compliance Division is broken down into 3 different functions. Folks in the community are more familiar with the first function that I have at the top, which is our code enforcement team, and they essentially are responsible for maintaining the quality of life throughout the city. This is done through code enforcement officers who are non-sworn staff members, yet they are credentialed, meaning that they do go through state mandated training and have to maintain such certifications on an ongoing basis. The code enforcement team does operate almost 24 hours a day, but definitely 7 days a week. So we have team members that work starting at 7 a.m. until 12 a.m. Monday through Wednesday, and then Thursday through Sunday, we actually have team members that start their shift at 7 a.m. and then conclude at 3 a.m. So again, almost a 24-hour response operation as it relates to code enforcement. And then we have our business license and permitting team. And this is made up of a number of administrative support staff that essentially process all of our regulatory business licenses, also serve as the liaison to the Business License Commission, and also issue a number of other permits, that being extended hour construction permits, special event permits, outdoor dining permits, and a lot of other ancillary permits that folks are actually quite surprised and unaware of when we provide them with information on all of the licenses and administrative functions that are processed in this team. The third function in the division is actually our animal care and control function, and that is a contract management and oversight. We do currently contract with the Los Angeles County Department of Animal Care and Control, and so they do provide services in the West Hollywood community 7 days a week, and that is 24 hours a day.
Danny, can I just interrupt you for a sec?
Sure.
I think we're only seeing the PowerPoint open, not the individual slides. I think you're referring to slide 2, but we don't see it as a presentation right now. We just see the first page. Is that true for everybody else? Yeah.
That's correct.
Yes, that's correct. I was hoping they would be brought up, but they don't seem to.
Oh, that's not good. Sorry. Thank you for mentioning that. I'm seeing it on my screen, and I'm at City Hall. And good thing that I emailed the commission secretary in advance.
Do you want Roger to give it a shot?
Yeah. Let me stop sharing.
Wasn't it nice when we were back in person for 5 seconds?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Let me see here. That's just so odd.
There it is.
That works.
Oh, you have it. You see it now.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
That is.
Thanks.
All right.
Danny, just let me know when you want me to go to the next slide.
Okay. Great. I think we can go to the next slide.
Now I'm having issues. Sorry, 1 second.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Apologies. So this is just an overview of the division. It gives you just a snapshot in terms of the organizational structure. We do have a total of 14 staff. That includes the code compliance manager, 2 supervisors, 2 senior officers, 6 code enforcement officers, 1 technician, and then the code compliance specialist and the administrative specialist are the team members that actually process the licensings and the permitting functions that I mentioned. If we can go to the next slide. Broken down into the 3 different functions, I already outlined kind of the hours of operation for code enforcement. The business licensing and permitting function is your standard hours of operation that City Hall is open. So you're 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and then 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Fridays. We do have different emails, but the primary one is the code@weho.org. More importantly, what I wanted to highlight is on the right side of this slide is the reporting method that we always encourage the community to report, and that is through our West Hollywood official city app. And so essentially a community member can download this application on their smartphone. And as they're going about their business, whether they're driving, walking in the city, if they see a pothole, if they see, a property maintenance issue or some other situation that's ongoing in the community, they can report that through their smart phone device. And you can even attach photographs. And essentially what ends up occurring is as soon as you submit that automatically gets routed to the appropriate division in the department for follow-up. I will tell you that our code compliance, code enforcement team, it takes up a little over 50% of the volume of requests that actually are reported through this official city app. So it plays a huge vital role, in terms of us tracking requests, response time, etc. Folks can, of course, always contact our code enforcement team as well. The number is listed there at the very top, 323-848-6516. Essentially what occurs then is when they contact that number, you will not receive a live person because this is a contact number that's responded to even after hours. And so that will allow the folks to leave a message if they're requesting a callback, and staff will essentially receive that message, whoever is working via email to their smartphones, in their vehicle, in computer units as well. So they have direct access to all this. But what they end up doing is they end up having to transfer that information into the official city app on the back end, again, for tracking purposes. So we always kind of encourage folks to submit it online, but if they want to give us a call, give us a call. But all that information is just transferred over as well. And again, if folks want to have any sort of follow-up, then they leave their contact information and then staff follows up. Next slide, please. In addition to the 3 functions that I mentioned, the Code Compliance Division is highly involved in a number of policy items. I listed just a few here on this slide just to kind of give you a sense of what that is. We have our vacant property and maintenance ordinance. We went through a huge overhaul of this ordinance in 2019, and it took effect in early 2020. But we're constantly looking for ways to improve, which would allow our staff, our team members that are responding to concerns reported in the community to be able to do their jobs in terms of gaining compliance, right, in the most effective and efficient way. Vaccine verification requirements, I listed that in there because, of course, as you may be all aware of, during the height of the pandemic, the city council did enact a number of executive orders, et cetera, and ordinances, emergency ordinances as it relates to protecting the community. And so the vaccine verification requirement was something that we worked with the city attorney's office on and brought forward, as well as our team following through and making sure that businesses were complying with that. Massage establishment, cigarette butt pollution. So as the list kind of carries on, you can just kind of see, right, the wide variety of the different and several policy items that the division is involved in. Next slide, please. So I wanted to just provide a sense to the commission in terms of the volume of service requests that our code enforcement team actually responds to. So this gives you calendar year information for the last 5 calendar years. And you can see a substantial increase from 2017 to actually the end of last calendar year. We've actually seen a 78% increase. So you would think that even at the height of the pandemic, right, in early 2020, that things kind of calmed down, and that may have been the case for some of the other services. However, that wasn't the case for code compliance. Our code enforcement team was extremely busy, and they continue to be busy, even with the policy items that I mentioned, right, reflected on the previous slide. All of those policy items require and necessitate follow-up. Folks are going to report on those policy items that are adopted by city council, and that does cause an impact in terms of workload for our code enforcement staff when they're out investigating these types of issues. So next slide. I wanted to kind of give you a more current information and data here. So this is reflecting from January 1st to the end of April. So a total of 4 months. So you're seeing the comparison between 2021 and 2022. So it looks like we are again trending slightly in the upward angle for responding to a number of different requests. And so just know again that these are reported to us. We do have some instances where our code enforcement team is proactive and a little more focused on what they're addressing. But as you see the steady increase, we really don't have that much time for our staff to be proactive. It's more of a reactive, meaning that we receive the report from the community member, and then that necessitates the investigation and response. Next slide. Some of the more common request types that we receive, believe it or not, the number one at the top of the list is noise. I was actually shocked coming to West Hollywood from another city almost a little over 3.5 years ago to learn that noise was the biggest factor that our code enforcement team responds to. But noise stems out in so many different angles, whether it's residential, having to deal with construction related activities, whether it has to deal with gas leaf blowers, whether it has to deal in the evening and weekends that we get quite frequently with our entertainment venues with noise, right, that's emitting from commercial establishments, hotels, et cetera, right? So all of that ties into the noise. When you add all of those different elements into one category, it for sure takes the cake. It's at the top of the list. And then the second is our property maintenance, housing, and vacant property issues. So it's a combination of those things. Property maintenance is more of your exterior elements. It could be landscaping. It could be lack of chipped paint or other issues to structures. Housing is more related to tenant habitability standards. So if somebody's contacting us and saying, hey, we don't have hot water, our smoke detector isn't operating, or other issues, those are mainly the issues that our team will respond to. And actually, in fact, we're very closely with the Rent Stabilization Division as well from time to time on those. So vacant property, I think it speaks for itself, but we do have a number of vacant properties in West Hollywood. We also had implemented a new program as a result of a new ordinance that we took to the City Council in 2020 as well, as it relates to that. So that's something that we keep ongoing every month in terms of just making sure that we can stay on top of those issues. And then I have construction, zoning, business license, right of way would speak to issues. It could be signage, the scooters that are being placed out into the sidewalk areas, et cetera. And then environmental is more speaking to any sort of illicit discharge that's placed out into our drainage. Next slide, please. I also highlighted, as I mentioned, one of the functions is the business licensing. So it's just giving you some data there to kind of look at. We are seeing, and happy to report, from 2020 to 2021, an increase in the volume of business licenses. We seen that dip, which I think everybody would understand why, with the closure of so many businesses and the health orders that were in place, right? It made it very difficult for certain businesses to continue to operate. So next slide, please. And the next slide is just a continuation of giving you a snapshot of that. One of the things I wanted to highlight here is the special event permits. As we're getting into Memorial Weekend and then the following weekend, Pride festivities, I can tell you our administrative team is extremely busy right now processing a number of special event permits. And these are more geared towards your brick and mortar businesses, right, that want to do activities outside of what they're allowed and permitted to do under their conditional use permits. Next slide, please. And then the last two slides, this being the first of those, is just touching on the vacant property program. We've worked so hard and have really reached out to all the partners internally at the city, and even our exterior partners like our sheriff's department and social services providers, to really try to get a handle of the vacant properties that we currently have. So we have established kind of a list that you're seeing in an overview of a process that our team, when we do receive a report that there is in fact a potential vacant property, these are the steps that staff take in terms of going through that and establishing that, and then entering that vacant property into our database. And then the final slide, please. And one of the things that I wanted to highlight too is we did establish, as a part of the new program, a task force, and this is a task force that's involves all of the internal and external partners. We meet once a month, and we go over actually the list of every single vacant property. We have social services that's a part of that team too. So if they're unhoused persons that staff is interacting with, then we're communicating that information, and the outreach teams are going out to provide services to folks as a part of that process. You have the sheriff's department, fire department that are a part of that as well. If there's any issues, all of that information is being exchanged at that time. And that concludes the presentation. And as I mentioned, I'm happy to answer any questions the commission may have.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Maggio.
Yes, Danny, I hope you can hear me.
Okay.
A few years back, I was driving up La Cienega with a friend, and a dump truck in front of me dumped quite a bit of cement on the hill going up to Sunset. And I remember I got on my phone instantly and called code enforcement. They took the call immediately, and they were out really, really quick. So I guess what I'm asking, we cannot do that anymore. There is no one to pick up the telephone. And if they do get a message, it's not attended to perhaps till the next morning, you said, or did I misunderstand that?
No, and thank you for asking that question, and appreciate the comment that you made too. I'm definitely pass that on, even though it was a couple of years ago, onto the team. It's always great to hear when somebody explains that they received a quick response. But no, we do have staff that do answer and take calls, and that is answered Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. So during normal hours, City Hall hours, However, we do try to encourage folks to use the dedicated after hours code enforcement line. And that is the line that I mentioned that does not have a live person that's taking that call, but it is immediately routed to the team members that are working that shift. But there is, to your point, during normal City Hall hours, Monday through Friday, somebody that does accept, pick up the call and answers that. But that is a different number that I had reflected on the slide.
Okay, maybe we should have that number posted as well for those individuals who might only have an opportunity maybe to call, maybe they're not skilled in going into the link. You know, there's all these new things happening, Danny, with technology.
There is.
So you got to give everyone a hand.
Absolutely. Look at what happened to me. I tried to share my screen. I couldn't get even the
Absolutely.
But yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we do have the numbers listed on our code compliance webpage. It does outline, right, the different numbers. But, you know, I think that's a great idea to actually maybe highlight, hey, this number, you'll have a live person, right, versus the one that's more of a message line. But our expectation for our team members, if they do leave that message and it gets routed, somebody's always contacting that person immediately. I would say within 30 minutes, somebody's getting a call letting them know that somebody's being dispatched out there.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Commissioner Ayers.
The chart on your last page, was that residential properties, commercial, or both?
Great question, Commissioner. It actually is a combination of both, but I will say with confidence that the overwhelming amount are residential that we have on that list by far.
Okay, and are the problematic properties usually residential?
Yes, all the ones that are on that list are definitely residential properties.
And of those properties, I would assume they tend to be off the main streets of, like, they're not on Sunset or Santa Monica Boulevard. They're more on side streets, a little, you know, off, I guess, high visibility areas.
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah, they're definitely not on any of our major thoroughfares, as you mentioned, those boulevards. They are, you know, within kind of in deep into the residential side streets is where we have these vacant properties. Yeah.
Okay, and so you must have a relationship then with the county sheriffs as far as, like, so how does that work? What kind of things do you call them in for?
Yeah, great question. So it all depends on the type of report, right? Many times, I mean, if we do get something which is common, where neighbors will contact us first and say, hey, you know, we have some trespassing that's going on a property, right? And so when that occurs, then our code enforcement staff have direct line of communication with the special teams of deputies that work, our cops team members. And so they'll contact them directly as opposed to calling the station. And they'll say, hey, you know, I just got a call. I'm heading over here to this property. Can you meet me there? Because as a part of that, having the deputies, they're present, they have to clear the property, right? Just to make sure that it's safe. And then the code enforcement officer can do their inspection in terms of making sure all the doors, windows are secured, that the property is meeting our maintenance standards, and then contacting, right, the representatives of the property to bring any issues to their attention.
Great, that's really useful information. Thank you.
Sure.
Commissioners, other questions? Vice Chair Copeland.
Hi, Danny, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good to see you.
Likewise.
I have a question for you with regard to securing residential properties and how it fits in with a couple of state requirements, and if code compliance would be the person to call. One of them says that landlords must secure all common areas of the rental property with locking mechanisms, which would be including lobbies, stairways, elevators, hallways, shared laundry rooms, backyards, on-site parking areas, according to the state code. And the other one is that landlords have a duty to take measures to protect their tenants from foreseeable crime on their property. So if crime is occurring on a certain property, like they're getting a lot of prowlers, or, you know, a certain repetitive crime, that they're supposed to do something to help mitigate that. how does that apply here in our residential housing in West Hollywood, either one of those things? And would code compliance be the one to contact to say, hey, we don't have any locking gate into our property and we're finding people in the pool area, which is not locking, or in the laundry room, which is not locked? Would you be your department be the people to call on both of those?
Yeah, for the first one, and great to see you as well, Vice Chair. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the locking mechanisms is definitely something that our team would go out and inspect and take a look at. Some of the areas definitely surrounding the pool, that's an important and critical safety element that needs to be in place. And certain other areas on the property as well. So our code enforcement team would go out there, take a look at it, assess it. And if there's issues there, then they would certainly bring it to the property owner's attention. I don't know specifically what state code section you're referencing, but you can either email it, send it over to me, or I can write it down if you want to let me know now. But the second component, in terms of kind of just more the protection for the tenants, I would have to take a look at that code section as well, because I don't know if that's something that would be more civil, or if it's something that would be potentially more criminal, and something that would more be in line with the sheriff's department staff to take a look at. But yeah, you could always provide that information.
Yeah, I'll be happy to send those to you. As far as like ingress and egress, if we have a building that has a gate, but there's no lock on it to the main entrance, so anyone can wander in, and none of these other areas are secured either. So is that something that code would address if it was occurring in West Hollywood?
Yes, it would. And not all buildings have secure front entrances, right? And the security that's there. And so it's not an absolute requirement. And it all depends on the building, right? And so what they were approved for, what their development agreement and conditional use agreements and permits outline and reflect. So a lot of times the staff will have to look at it. We have a lot of older buildings here in West Hollywood. It is something that is written into a lot of the new construction that we see. But we have a lot of legal non-conforming buildings, of course, that don't coincide with our current standards, right? So as a part of that, our staff will definitely take a look at that, speak with planning, get copies of that. And if there's issues we can address, we will.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Commissioners, yes, Commissioner Topshin.
Hi, Mr. Rivers, great to see you. You've been at the commission before, so it's always good to have you back. I sent my questions to Manager Hollop. I don't know if he shared them with you, if you had a chance to review them. I just wanted to give you kind of a heads up on the questions that some of the concerns, they may not be within your jurisdiction, but I wanted to hear from you and see, to the best of your knowledge, what would be your recommendation or your responses to these questions. And if you have the list, if you do you want me to kind of state the question, or you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Manager Holub did forward me over your questions. But yeah, if you wouldn't mind, I don't have them up in front of me. And I do want to just preface, I mean, my responses, I mean, I can certainly look into the construction related issues, right? And some of the other addresses that I think you had reflected. We don't get into detail or speak, because I don't know whether or not there's an active code enforcement case, and we don't divulge that out in any sort of public forum. But absolutely, please ask the questions and I'll provide the best answer as possible. Okay.
So I'm going to basically ask the general question. There's one specific question about specific construction site, and you may probably, take a look, and maybe you can contact me or your staff just to know what's going on, so I can respond to the residents' concerns. But as some of the general questions I had, I know there was recent, or several months ago, if I'm not mistaken, I attended a city council meeting where you were making a report. I don't really pay a good attention at the time because I was preparing my own presentation. It was something about the noise ordinance, whether it was an amendment or it was a new ordinance. And I just wondered if you could share, what was it about?
Yeah, absolutely. And so a great memory, because that was a little late last last year, I think in November, yeah, we did bring forth an item as it relates to loud parties and gatherings. And that was really stemming from the fact that during the pandemic, with all of community members, right, having to be staying at home and working from home, we had a number of concerns that were brought to our attention with parties and loud music, et cetera, that was going on. So there needed to certainly be some improvements made in that ordinance, in that section, that had not been made in almost 2 decades. So what we essentially did is we tied that issue and that ordinance to our administrative citation fee schedule and our process there, which it currently was not in. So if a code enforcement officer was responding to that type of concern, the only way of taking any sort of elevated enforcement action was to actually issue a misdemeanor citation. So we thought that that was maybe a little too egregious to kind of start off with, because that's essentially a notice to appear in court. And so rather than taking that first step, what we thought would be more effective, and which we take and apply through most of our violations of the municipal code, is going through our administrative remedies program. And that is issuing a warning notice, and then any subsequent issues, issuing fines that are administrative citations before elevating it to any sort of criminal type of action. And it gives us a little more leadway when we're issuing administrative citations as well, versus criminal citations. The collection of evidence is a little different. So again, allows us to kind of take that action and address issues. So that was more or less the reasoning behind why we brought that item, and also including our code enforcement team, because there was a little vagueness there between who was actually the responsible agency that would respond to those issues.
Interesting. And these are this relate to commercial or both residential and commercial properties?
Yeah, the way that it's written, it actually applies to both, but we have so many elements in our noise ordinance that specifically deal with commercial establishments. I mean, that's written into their conditional use permit. So we utilize those avenues in terms of gaining compliance with commercial establishments. I would say the intent and the focus of the amendments we made were geared specifically towards residential issues.
So for rent control buildings, that excessive or loud noise, let's say late evening, early morning hours, loud parties and everything. So what would be what would you advise how the tenants, residents who are annoyed or disturbed by those loud noises, who they have to report besides their landlords the next day, but during that party, what would be your best advice?
Yeah, I would encourage folks to contact our after hours code enforcement a message line, that the number that I provided that does not have a live person, because generally these calls do come in primarily in the evening hours, right? And so contacting us, and then that will necessitate a code enforcement officer going out, assessing the situation. If it is a very large party, and we had quite a few during the pandemic, where folks were renting out unpermitted, right, illegal short-term rentals, Airbnbs, and then they were having these large parties and having that. And so if a code enforcement officer go out there and sees 100 people, 50 people, maybe even more at a residential, then they contact the sheriffs, right, and they get the support they need in terms of addressing those issues. So I think my encouragement and recommendation to everyone is call code compliance first, and then they'll go out and assess it. And there's instances where somebody will say there's a loud party, and it ends up being really just the tenants that are there that maybe have their TV on too loud, or maybe they're having a bottle of wine and they have a little music playing a little too loud, right? Or they're talking a little loud. And so in those instances, staff does a door knock and they just bring to their attention the issue, asking them to lower it. And 9 out of 10 times that cures the situation.
That's good to know. And for those large parties, like you mentioned, let's say if a tenant rents out an apartment, empty apartment, and creates a big party, so a tenant can be cited, or the property owner will be cited for this type of violations.
Yeah, great question. I mean, we absolutely address the property owner in all aspects because in those instances, it's very difficult to acquire the tenant's legal name, right? And a lot of times you go, you do door act, everyone's going to point at, well, yeah, I'm just here. I'm a friend, right? I'm not the responsible person. So we always address, and one of the things that a code enforcement officer will do is they'll run the property, they'll acquire who's on the title of the property, acquire that property owner's name. And so when they're going and making contact, right, they're able to provide that, letting the folks know, hey, I know who the owner is. And we are going to issue them the appropriate notice and take action appropriately. And in many instances, they will provide the information. And if they do, then in those cases, we'll issue a citation. Or if sheriffs have to respond, deputies are able to assist the code officers in terms of acquiring the identification for staff to issue the citation.
In Mr. Rivers, what are the cutoff hours for this type of loud parties in on-site or even off-site construction activities?
So construction and loud parties, two different things. I mean, for the loud parties, we essentially will be a slightly more flexible if the noise is being generated before 10 p.m. because our noise ordinance more or less kind of addresses that as a whole with commercial establishments. So we try to stay consistent. However, I just want to be clear that, you know, if there are instances, it could be midday and they're just playing music and it sounds like a nightclub, you know, type situation, our staff does have the ability to address it at any time, but they are flexible and it's up to the officer's discretion. For construction, noise generated for construction, as long as it's permitted or it doesn't require a permit and it's allowed, that is between the hours of 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. So that's written again into our noise ordinance specifically for construction. On Saturdays, construction is not allowed to occur unless it is in a completely enclosed structure, meaning that if you have new construction, if they don't have the doors, they don't have the windows installed, then it wouldn't qualify as that. And then on Sundays and national holidays, construction is not allowed. Anything that does occur outside of those hours, that is when a construction contractor would have to submit to code compliance for an extended hours construction permit.
Okay. All right. That's great. Great information. Thank you. A couple of other questions, if I may ask you. It's we've seen, and a lot of people complain also about dog feces not being picked up on the streets, and that type of issues. Who the residents can address is again code enforcement. That would be your area.
It would, yes.
How would you report that if you see somebody doesn't pick up the, you know, after the dog? So, and in 5 minutes that person is gone. So, how you report that?
Yeah, it certainly makes it extremely difficult for our team to be able to follow up and hold that pet owner responsible for that. What we typically will do is the officer will ask whoever's reporting, you know, if they're seeing a trend, if they know who the person is. In some instances they do. Okay. Most of the time they don't. They'll just see a passerby. But if they say, hey, you know what, generally I see these folks coming out here walking their dogs between this time and this time, right, on this day. And so what we'll end up doing is we'll end up doing some proactive focused enforcement on that street. And then we do outreach at the same time. We have handouts. And so as staff is out and about, you know, you obviously will see other community members. And so they'll be doing proactive outreach, right? Handing handouts to folks, letting them know and bringing to their attention what was reported to us.
Okay, it's good to know. It's then your agency where this concern should be addressed to.
Yes, it's us, and animal control also has the ability to deal with that, but code enforcement ends up taking it because we're kind of on an island here with the county. Their shelter is in Carson. And so when animal control gets a call, it does take them many hours to get to the city.
Thank you. And now this one, I don't know if this is within your jurisdiction or not, the vehicle, motorcycles, any type of vehicle that have removed mufflers that creates excessive noise. I've been very actually surprised and pleased when I was in one of the neighboring cities, and I saw the police actually stopped a vehicle because of that noise, the motorcycle, and I saw that he was giving a citation, so I stopped by and I asked the question, and because this is something that I was preparing to ask you, and I saw it recently, and I thought, wow, that was a great enforcement, and he said, yeah, because they're not allowed to remove this muffler, so I gave a citation. So he didn't go into much details, but I wonder what is the enforcement? We hear the horrible noise sometimes on the residential neighborhoods. People drive their motorcycles, cars. And I've seen actually sheriffs next to the sheriffs they're passing by, and nobody really cares. So, and that adds up to as you mentioned, West Hollywood is a really noisy city. I've been living here for 27 years. The last, I would say, about 10 years, it's really unbearable, the noise. And I talked to the residents, everybody is complaining about it, nobody's doing anything. So, and I thought, okay, so this is a good chance to ask this question.
Absolutely, and it's a great question. Yeah, in terms of moving vehicles, that is not something that our code enforcement team or code compliance addresses. That's something that would be handled by the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department.
Sheriffs, that's what I thought.
Any sworn police agency. However, if you're having situations on private property, then code compliance would address that.
Okay.
So if somebody is making loud, vehicle sounds, revving the engines, et cetera, and that's occurring, then that's something that code enforcement would address. But I think what you're referring to, right, is the vehicles that are speeding or making those muffler noises. That's something that would be handled by the West Hollywood Sheriff Station.
So it's probably would be a good idea for residents just to write down the license plate or description of the vehicle and contact the sheriff's department and report, because I've seen myself some of the vehicles that they just go up and down the street, and even in the late hours, like after midnight. And actually, I took a couple of pictures of the vehicles that I saw. I think we should actively report this type of violators, because we're all concerned about the what do you call it, the comfort and the enjoyment of the residents that live in the city. And the last question, and I appreciate your time spending, but I think this is within your jurisdiction. And we recently had the discussion, and maybe Manager Holub can join if he wants to add something. This is about non-working elevators in the buildings. And I don't want to bring up a specific address because as you mentioned at the beginning, so may require some sort of a review. But even the affordable housing, one of the complexes in the city, I've heard that there are the elevators, they break down even, let's say, on Friday, and nothing happening during the weekend. And all the seniors and disabled people are locked in their apartments until Monday, the next Monday. So this is a really a big concern of those residents. And I just wonder, I know that Jonathan, we recently we heard this item several months ago, I think in 2021, right? And it was some recommendation to the city council. I think I want to know what was recommended, what was passed. Is this a law that, what can we do? And this commission had some recommendations. I remember when we discussed this item, and also as a code enforcement manager, Mr. Rivas, if you can cover your area, what can be done to maybe cite the violators, or not even just a cite. The citation is not the issue. The issue is how can this quickly be resolved so then the tenants are not trapped in their units over the weekend or evening hours.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do remember that conversation. Actually, I think that's when I presented the Rent Stabilization Commission. And so, the strong recommendation that we provide to tenants is to make sure that they report to us as soon as possible, because many times what ends up happening is they do wait maybe 24, 48 hours, right? And then they contact us. And so code enforcement goes out there right away that same day. But for us, that's when the clock starts ticking. The clock starts ticking when the code enforcement officer is out on site because they're collecting their evidence, right? They're documenting what is occurring. And so we give them 24 hours. That is where we start. We issue them a notice. But in many instances, because a lot of these buildings are older, a lot of the elevators are older. So that means the parts that maybe need to get replaced in certain elements, right, take some time to be received and for that work to occur, right? Especially with the supply chain issues that happened during the pandemic. We had a couple of instances where that was the case, and we truly seen concerted effort, right, from the property owners, from the representatives, showing us receipts, showing us invoices, providing us that documentation. We don't just take their word for it. We do, go the extra step in terms of making sure that we're holding them accountable to the extent possible. However, as written into the ordinance, and Jonathan can add to this, also in the rent stabilization ordinances, we wanted to make sure that there was relocation benefits that were afforded to tenants in situations, right, that have where maybe some folks have disabilities or unable to go out, get food, etc. And so in those instances, then we can order the property owner to have to provide that service or a relocation benefit to that specific tenant. So that's why it's so important, right, though, for us to receive the information as soon as possible. But I can't tell you enough that I've seen a number of cases that I end up having to get involved in, because I get it that the tenants are very frustrated because they've been dealing with this for a couple of days, but then we just learned about it, right, recently. So the earlier that it's reported to us, then the quicker that we can respond and the quicker that we can start the process and make a determination on what needs to be done to take care of some of the folks that you had mentioned.
Okay, and there is I remember we talked about including a kind of identifying a designated phone number that will be placed or posted in the elevators in every building in the city. I'm residential, I'm talking about. Is the reporting, is it through any number or through the app that you said, which I already uploaded, but is it through that app, or some people, if they're not really familiar with that technology, so maybe there's a designated phone number for the elevator specifically issue?
Yeah, I'm going to use the not live person number, and the reason being is because, again, I mean, if an elevator goes out after hours, I want to make sure, right, that we have a team member that's going to respond. Because if we give them the hours during city hall hours, they call that number. That number, however, is not forwarded over to the staff member that's working. I mean, they check it periodically, but it's better to just report. So that would be the 323-848-6516 number.
That's a live person number. That's the city hall. No, that's the reporting.
That's the non-live person. Yeah.
This is for specifically elevators issues related.
Correct. Yeah. So that would be the number that I would encourage any resident to call if they're experiencing elevator issues that obviously aren't being corrected swiftly.
Thank you. And maybe Jonathan, you can just briefly tell us what happened with those recommendations that we heard. The commission.
Right. Sure. In the amendments that the commission heard and council approved in 2021 include what Danny mentioned. The part of our temporary relocation ordinance, it was updated to include elevator outages when it's a senior, disabled, or otherwise mobility impaired person. The landlord must provide relocation benefits or some sort of accommodation to that tenant so that they can get necessary services. And that's something that the tenant can ask for. And to Danny's point, for it to be enforceable, the city needs to know about it so that the clock starts ticking and the benefits can be enforced.
And I remember one of my personal recommendations were, I don't know if it passed or not, to have the designated number posted in the elevator so that people would know where to, if somebody's stuck in the elevator, they wouldn't know where to report. They're gonna probably start dialing 911 and all the possibles. I remember when we discussed, I said it would be a good idea to have something required to be posted, at least in the rent control units. I would actually cover any residential apartment building that has an elevator in the building to have this number or any other number.
I remember that discussion. I don't remember what came of that, other than it's not the law.
Okay.
But to your point, I think, that's an emergency situation. So I'm not sure that it would necessarily, certainly the relocation issue at that moment is not critical. And code isn't, and correct me if I'm wrong, Danny, I don't think you extricate people from elevators.
No. Yeah, in that situation, if somebody's stuck in an elevator, you definitely want to call 911.
911. But it's, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's, yeah. Call 911 for it if you're stuck in an elevator, for sure.
Correct. So for other issues that it's broken down or something, but we keep talking about relocation, but some of the buildings, let's say if it's a newer apartment building and it just breaks down once in a while for 1 day or for 2 days, the relocation will not be required, right? Because we don't want to displace the tenants from their apartments just because the elevator broke down.
Right. So, the relocation benefit is if the elevator is out for 72 hours, 72 consecutive hours.
Temporarily or permanent relocation?
No, temporary. There's an expectation that it will be fixed.
Okay, yeah, because it scares me. I mean, when we talk about relocation, in my mind, it's like permanent relocation.
The provision is in the temporary relocation ordinance, which is separate from anything involving a permanent relocation.
Right. You mentioned that. Thank you so much. Thank you both, Director Rivas. Thank you. I really appreciate the information you provided. It brought some light to at least the questions that I had, and for that specific example that was in my email, so I probably will follow up with you later on. I appreciate everything that you shared with us. Thank you.
Absolutely, anytime.
Commissioners, Commissioner Maggio.
Danny, I just wanted to mention that dysfunctional elevators are not germane to just old buildings. I know two particular new buildings on Santa Monica Boulevard. One of the buildings in particular, the elevator has been out for 5 weeks and probably will not be repaired for another 4 weeks. And that's simply because the part has to come from Germany. So it is a supply issue as well, but it's amazing to think that an elevator is out for 2 months.
I agree, Commissioner, and if you'd like to reach out to me via email, I'm happy to have my team look into that.
But even if we look into it, even if we make demands, what can they do about it? They have to have the part. They can't fix the elevator without the part. But the relocation, I think, might come into play here for some of the older tenants who really do need a little bit more help than normally. But I think I will have to talk to you about it specifically, or this building in specific.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're absolutely correct. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we can't have them fix, an elevator when they're waiting on a part. And if it's true, in fact, which it is because of the supply chain issues, but we can start with those temporary relocation benefits to those tenants that need it. And that's a part of that process that we put them on notice to start communicating with their tenants, right? To ascertain that information so they can start getting the help they need.
Thank you very much.
Commissioners, any other questions? Does not look like it. Mr. Rivas, thank you very much. Anything else to add or good to go?
Nope. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody.
Appreciate it. Thank you. All righty. We are now, any items from staff, Mr. Holland?
I don't know if you can hear me. I can't see
Yes.
myself.
Yes, we can hear
Okay,
you
I don't
now.
know what
There you
something
are.
happened. There we are. Well, I just wanted to thank Danny. He left, but I just wanted to thank Danny. As he mentioned, he is doing 2 very difficult jobs right now. So I really appreciate him taking the time to put together the presentation and spend the evening with us. So thanks, Danny, wherever you are.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Holub. Thank you, Danny. Moving right along, Mr. Secretary, any public comment?
We have no public speakers.
All right, thank you very much. Commissioner comments. Vice Chair Copeland, I know you had saved some for last.
Yes, I did. I have to announce that this is my last meeting on this commission. I'm trying to keep my composure here, but it's been an absolute honor and a privilege to serve with each and every one of you. And even when we haven't always agreed, we managed to be respectful and learn from one another, and that's how it should be. Staff has been wonderful. They've made it so much easier to serve. And I appreciate Mayor Pro Tem Shine having faith in me and giving me the opportunity to serve. I especially have to say how wonderful it's been to work with our housing manager, Mr. Holub. I worked with him years back as a tenant, and now having worked with him as a commissioner, he's been that same patient, unflappable, open-minded, kind, and knowledgeable person once again. And we're very fortunate to have him as our manager. And it's been absolutely wonderful to be here and see the updates happening to the RSO. So thank all of you once again. It's meant the world to me, truly. And that's it.
Thank you, Vice Chair Copeland. I'm going to very much miss having you on the commission. You've been a very able right hand to me when I've been gone, and I always appreciate your comments, and you're a steady force for us here, knowledgeable, kind, caring, and compassionate. And I know that we're better for having you on the commission, and whoever replaces you will be hard to fill your shoes.
Thank you so much. Very kind. Thank you.
You're welcome. Commissioner Maggio.
Commissioner Copeland, thank you very much for all that you've done. Of course, I know you live in town, so I know how I can get a hold of you for coffee. So I know I'll be seeing you, although I'll miss you here. And you know what? I'm glad in 28 months we finally had one meeting with you in person. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yeah, Vice Chair Copeland, I just want to thank you for the service, and I really enjoyed working with you on that task force along with Commissioner Ayers. We had some really good time on discussing those issues regarding the reduction of services, and because of your passionate position on those issues, and the ordinance been amended, and regulations been amended. It's just you're a very passionate person. You're a dedicated person to this community, and that really means a lot. And I really enjoyed working with you on this commission for this short time, but it feels like I've known you for many years, and we shared a lot of common things on those issues, housing related and rent control, although we not always agreed, but it was done, as you mentioned, in a very respectful manner. But I'm really going to miss you, and as the chair mentioned, whoever comes next has some large shoes to fit in. So I wish you good luck.
Thank you so much.
As for the other thing is, I wanted to thank Manager Holub for scheduling that discussion with the director Rivas. I think that this was really, at least to me, it was very important to know the issues that are within the purview of the code enforcement compliance division, and it seems like there is a number of issues that relate to rent control or housing one way or another. I mean, who would have known that the allowed parties could be addressed, not just by the sheriffs when you have your neighbors going crazy in the middle of the night and you dial immediately the sheriff's department, but you can actually report to the code enforcement, depending on the obviously size of the party or whatever the details are. I think it's very important to know this stuff because we all live in this city. We are very concerned about the quality of life, and the quality of life, it's not only hotels and nightclubs and the restaurants, and the quality of life, it's also the city's cleanliness. And I have a lot of issues about that, at least in my neighborhood, and also the safety of the city. That's what makes the city quality, high quality, and the noise. And I'm glad the director himself mentioned that it's a noise. It's a major issue, a major concern for the residents, and we need to realize it, and we need to address these issues. And I encourage the commissioners to speak to the council people who appointed you to the commission. So maybe at the council level, they can also look into these issues and the noise issue in the city. And I also want to encourage that we schedule some the discussion of the commission on different topics and other topics, and bring the different divisions and departments to make their presentation, to share their work that they do for the community, for the city. And I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Manager Howard, for that, and Chair Marks for allowing me to take all the time and ask these questions. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Very welcome. Commissioner Ayers?
Yeah, I just want to thank Vice Chair Copeland for her service and for the warm welcome you gave me when I joined. You made my transition to this commission a lot easier and more interesting, and I will miss you. Thank you.
Commissioner Montanaro?
Oh, Vice Chair Copeland, I'm so sad to see you go. You have been a voice of reason and calm on the commission. I've really enjoyed always listening to your comments, and you've been a great help to me, even though we haven't been able to connect much. Listening to you has always been really helpful in forming my own opinions and comments. So thank you, and you'll be very missed.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any other comments? Commissioner Maggio.
Yes, I'd just like to compliment Commissioner Manure on his beautiful new gray jacket. Did he hear me?
Yes, he's giving you a grin, so I think he is.
We
All
all
right.
heard.
It's technically blue, but that's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not colorblind, but it looks gray to me.
It looks gray.
Thank you.
Yeah, little gray, bluish gray.
All right, any other comments? All right, we are going to adjourn this meeting in honor of the children lost in Texas this week and for the entire community there. The next meeting of the Rent Stabilization Commission will be held on Thursday, June 23rd, 2022 at 7 o'clock via teleconference. Thank you all, and good night, and a special good night to Vice Chair Copeland.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night.